we're here now. Let's talk about how we make cool miniatures. Dallas Camp.
Oh man, this is Marco's seminar, and I'm just gonna make it up. Okay, let's talk about how we make miniatures. So the very first thing we got is an idea, right? So we get a schedule, we make a schedule, and we look at the schedule. I usually work in order. So like each month I look at, January 2020X, and I just kind of work my way in order. And we kind of think about and we think about the pose, right? Or we think about the character, and we talk about the costume and all that. I'm starting at the very beginning, right? This is like the big bang of it.
The Big Bang?
This is like the Big Bang of making a miniature.
The explodey?
The big explosion, the big miniature explosion. So we look at the character. So like, let's say we're making Craven, or we're making the new Spider-Man, or we're making Yoda, whatever. We look at the character, and we decide the costume, we decide the era and all that stuff, and then we start talking about poses, and sort of that is like one of my favorite parts of making the miniature, is like thinking about the personality and translating that personality over to plastic, right? And like a single shot, three-dimensional thing that's completely static. And how do you make it kinetic? How do you carry that personality? So there's a lot of conversation around that. And that can be everything from somebody standing up and doing the hunter. That means that's Craven.
That was not what we used for Craven, though. Like, he really wanted us to use that. Instead, we used something a little more dynamic.
But it's getting that flavor, right? And like sometimes we take a picture. Like I know I've taken pictures of you and Pagani, and then we use those as like a basis. Like we don't one for one it, obviously, but like if somebody's doing Doctor Strange, then we go, okay, because we need to see it in 3D and stuff like that, Or sometimes we look at like comic book covers. We have a really great comic homage that we've done, or interior panels, or even like things that you see in real life, like athletes and stuff like that. So we get like a feel for it. Then we draw the concept, and we pick the costume, and that's when it goes to a sculptor. And then I don't know what images you have. Like I said, this is Marco's seminar.
I have miniatures, sir. I have so many miniatures. Who do we want to look at first? Should we look at Craven? You're talking a lot about Craven. Let's look at Craven.
Just put Craven up there.
Give me one shake of a lamb's tail, and I will bring the Cravens up. I'll bring the Cravens up.
The shook back and forth.
Everything is going great. It's awesome. I'm totally encroaching on your space. See, I'm setting up shots live. This is where we truly learn, where we truly separate. All right, here we go.
This is us really making it up, because this is Marco. Okay, so there's our Marco Segovia. This is the best. I like that we're like.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that Marco did pose for this one in the end. We made him stand on a chair and do the hunter pose, because he's the most swollest of boys in the office. So.
He's the swole boy. So yeah, like you gotta think a lot about like these miniatures in 3D. Look, there's Marco.
No, he's not here yet. You think he's here, but the chat doesn't know. You spoiled the surprise.
I'm just gonna stand here and look pretty then. No.
Keep talking, Mark. Or
Dallas, Marco. We don't know.
Keep talking, Dallas. Whoever's talking, talk. It's fine. Marco will
so
be
we don't
live
actually,
in a second.
like when we talk about standing up in chairs, we don't actually like stand up in the chair. I mean, we do stand up in the chair, but it's like it's not a and then that's done, right? It's like you jump up in the chair and you get like kind of an idea of the pose, and then you work from that, right? And I love Will Schick's cheek. This is the most amazing. I love this
I know.
stream.
This is
Uh,
going great. Look, I got to type. I'm
and
typing to
then
Marco. It's going fine. It's going fine. I
a
am
lot of
gonna.
times, when I'm working with the concept, I'll show it to the engineers and be like, where's our pitfalls at? What are we talking about here? And they'll give me feedback like, you can't have the arm like this, like we need to rotate the arm like that because of this detail. That's what this is going to end up being. We're going to talk about how that detail gets translated to plastic and why cuts are made the way they're made, right? When you have plastic injection, you have two giant chunks of metal, right? Big metal plates, and they smash together. So something like a face, right? That metal is going like this, and the two pieces meet here. So you can't have undercuts, and that's a big thing. Is you can't have undercuts. The metal can't dip into the sides of a head, right? So if we want something really cool on the sides, like Star-Lord's mask, right, has.
Oh, I'm letting Dallas do his thing.
Just let
He's
me
letting it go.
for
I'm letting it go.
Just let
Look,
me go for it.
he seemed to have all of it going with those concepts. I was like,
I'm
well,
just
I mean,
going.
he's he has it down. That's, I mean, pretty much what Dallas was saying. It's like, yeah, like the metal molds give no give. Like unlike a silicone or whatever kind of material that people usually use for resins or metal casting, like these for hard plastic, these molds are just unforgiving for that kind of detail, like for undercuts, for
The
lift.
tolerance is almost zero.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much is
Yeah.
zero. And so pretty much you have to approach every miniature knowing that whatever detail, how you're going to part that model, all those details that are going to be lined along where the molds meet, they cannot have any undercuts.
Yeah. So like Margaret's saying, like a resin miniature or a plastic miniature are made in rubber molds. So those, they peel apart. So if it's on a head, it can peel away and you can have insets. So when we're saying details, we're not meaning necessarily a theme. We're talking really about undercuts and insets. So like Star-Lord has the most beautiful example. We have this beautiful detail on the side and the front. And to catch that in resin would be, one piece. So like you would just peel that apart. But in metal, you're coming front to back. That means there's no insets on the sides because that metal has zero tolerance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's a balancing act oftentimes because you want to preserve the integrity of the sculpt. You want to make sure that what the artist is trying to convey retains in the sculpt, while at the same time trying to stay true to the character and keeping the important elements that people recognize that character.
Yeah.
So, like a good example is the Spider-Man, right? Like we often use Spider-Man as an example because I mean he's one of the most complicated ones to make every time we do him. Like I think every time we go through a different iteration of Spider-Man, it's always brings a whole set of new challenges that we don't expect.
Remember January 2nd, 2019, we had a dry erase board, and the very first thing I drew on it was the Spider-Man conundrum, right? You have a cylinder that has to be cast in hard metal molds, and you have webbing all the way around it. And it was just like, well, how do you do this when the arm is twisting, when the body's twisting? And it was called the Spider-Man conundrum.
The Spider-Man conundrum, because all of those, he has detailed lines that are engraved, whether you extrude them, whether they're like actual pipe that stick out of the arm, or we actually, in our case, we carve those lines in that web pattern that goes around his suit. Like those go completely 360 around his arm. So then the question is, how do you cast all of that detail that's on his arm all the way around where the molds are going to meet, somewhere like right here down the middle? And so go ahead.
No, that's a good point. Like you said, the raised ones too. It's like we were talking about, I was talking about Star-Lord's head, right? It's like those insets on, but like if you have on the side and those steel molds are coming together and you have two raised elements, now you're thinking about the raised elements, but I'm thinking about that inset in between, and the steel can't do that, right? It's like it can't do it. They can't jump the humps and pull out, right? Because that steel would just pull it apart and just shred the head.
and like I often tell Evan and all our other engineers, like it's a constant battle, like to balance all these different elements when you're sculpting, when you're creating these miniatures, because you want to meet the expectations and desires of the community, but we're also trying to balance not just we're balancing more than just one community, right?
Yeah.
It's not just hobbyists, it's also the painters, players, and then the biggest one, the Marvel fans, which also have their own subset of groups: MCU fans, comic book fans, the Golden Age truists. So balancing their expectations and desires, that's the puzzle that we have to figure out every time, and that's a job when you and Chick have to decide on what direction to go and what iteration of the character we have to go with. Like that is not a job I would want to do. That is such a daunting. Oh.
Oh, we're just start bringing them up. Oh, he just said it.
Ooh, Dormant. Oh, no. No. No.
Or the best.
Schick is teasing us with all sorts of things that.
Marco, you're in charge. Tell him what to bring up.
Well, I honestly want to reveal a big one, but yeah. We'll reveal something.
All right. So
we got our Omega Red.
This character was just like, holy cow, the design, right? Remember?
This one was a doozy. Poor Evan had to figure this one out, but he got there. The biggest challenge being like what we were talking about, like drafting those cables. Mm-hmm. They are going in all directions, and not only that, they have detail all along that cable, all those cables. So trying to keep that as one piece so that people aren't putting these cables in multiple parts and gluing little tiny thin is that was when we got to hone in on like what tolerances we need to create a draft on these miniatures.
Yeah, because if you remember when I drew those noodles, like I drew those tentacles all over because I was just like, and you were like, what is this guy? And I'm like, dude, this is Mega Red. This is what this guy's all about. He's all about like crazy tentacles. And like when this guy shows up, like, Wolverine is in trouble. Like this is like a big time Wolverine. And when we were sculpting it, we actually worked with the sculptor a lot. I was sending a lot of images to you and Evan, and we worked to get those draft angles. So Evan figured out how to make each of those tentacles are one piece. Each one is a one piece tentacle, and it's an engineering, like I was blown away at what you and Evan were able to accomplish with this. And Chick is now
exactly
tangling him up.
He is playing a dangerous game that's probably making everyone clench.
Yeah, but those tentacles are super, super tight. Like I have the plastic here myself, and a lot of people don't know. Like whenever I get the first shots, I build them. A lot of times I throw them across my living room.
I remember the first time Dallas created the concept for Lizard. Like initially we had it that he was coming out of a sort of just kind of like in a stance.
Yeah, he's like creeping.
Yeah, he's kind of just aggressive. And then
Chick was
and so then I was completely on board. I was like, yeah, let's go all out. Let's throw the water. Let's have like the sewer, the cover, the manhole cover on there. Like, let's really just explore this miniature and go all out with it. Because I think at this point, we were feeling pretty confident that like we can make solid connections. We can We knew how to approach parting elements like the effects, which is it's a miniature on its own, honestly. Like whenever you make effects or terrain for hard plastic, you're making the character and also pretty much another miniature. Now, yeah, you
Yeah,
can tell on that frame.
I think that's an interesting point. Like when we put those effects on, like like sometimes a character might have like a simple rock, and sometimes a character has like a more complex thing like this. Like we're kind of sometimes making a choice on like we're going to spend extra time because just making that water takes as much time as making a character. Like it just does. And like not every miniature needs that. And like having that wide breadth from like a simple rock, or you say it's a rock or it's a random rock, but in our mind, the city's in crisis and it's the city crumbling around and they're all fighting. So everything from a chunk of rubble up to something like wispy arms reaching out of smoke, or explosion from Spider-Man. These are like characters that we have to create as well, and they take as much time or more. Bring up, oh yeah, bring up Mysterio. Let's talk about Mysterio. I think that is another one that like really shows what Marco is talking about here. Nessie, New York doesn't have, Nessie knows says New York City has great insurance. That's not true. It's damage control makes a lot of money cleaning up.
Oh yeah, for this one, it was really trying to get the smoke to wisp around the arm and not make that a nightmare to put together. That was tricks as we were talking about, like when you have to draft, like the question is, how do you draft that? It's completely going around the arm and it's not even touching it. So you obviously can't make that in one go in the molds, right? And so our engineer Evan had to go and cleverly make a natural sort of seam line that connects the smoke that you can't really tell until you actually get it in your hands and you're putting it together. But it also integrates within that cape, and as you can see from the side view that Schick has it at, that is where the smoke just drafts and goes straight back into that cape, and that's how it lays up and pulls from the mold without any snag. So it's very easy and it's very tempting that you want to make it as more dynamic with the smoke everywhere, not touching anything, not fusing through anything, but then you have to come to the conclusion, like how is it going to lay up? How many parts is it going to be? And that's really the challenge in making these miniatures is if it's going to be this many parts, it has to be an enjoyable experience. You have to give those people the successes to get there and actually feel accomplished when they have that model and be excited to paint it.
And that's like the big thing for us is like getting better and learning those lessons, right? It's like you don't intuitively know that. You have to try and you have to like do this and like, well, that doesn't quite work. Or like, you know, what's the tolerance and weight limit of plastic? Well, that we now know like where that tolerance and weight limit of plastic is. Like, and so we're learning those lessons and we're able to design more and more complex things with less and less parts.
And you get to approach these characters to their fundamentals, right? Like, okay, these gauntlets have to stay. Like, you can't get rid of them. And their design that's on those gauntlets, because this is part of Mysterio, and that's a part of his silhouette that people know, and they can recognize aside from like his dome. Like these are parts of him that you have to keep, and you have to figure out like this is how we're going to cast it because it has to stay. And so we do have some creative freedom and liberties in some aspects, but in other areas it isn't. So
that's a really solid point. Like if this was like this is the Marvel IP, and we have some, like you said, we have some liberties and we have some design control, but there are things that we don't, right? And so like if this was an original IP, we could make that hand and those gauntlets in one piece by eliminating a certain shape or eliminating design. But like for this to capture that Mysterio, that classic Mysterio, we had to cut those gauntlets to make that classic Mysterio look.
And like you said, it is a learning curve, a steep learning curve, because like I said, everyone has their own expectations and desires, right? And so as excited as Josh is when he comes in and says, "Hey, we should do this and do that," it's like at the end of the day, no matter what decision you make, and I always say this, like it's always going to be the wrong one, because people have their own idea of like what a character should be and what they should be doing. So you just have to try to retain the spirit of that character, and that's what's going to be the selling point.
Yeah, the personality is what really, really matters. I love this Mysterio, by the way. Like when we first drew this out, like I like this was one of the ones that I was just like, I know exactly what I want this guy to do. And it's just like he doesn't have a leg, it's coming out of smoke. He's like whooping out. And like we looked at it and we were like, this looks really hard. And then boom, we made this beautiful miniature. Like even
and at least that's the ideology for this specific line for a Marvel Crisis Protocol. But for something like Legion, which is a war game that has units, it has a whole mess of characters that you have to now put in one box. And that's where the approach to cutting and parting is a little different than something like Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Oh, so do you have some pictures of that? Like, so like when we're talking about Marvel Crisis Protocol, we're talking about individual characters, right? These are individual characters. But when you get into things like Legion, we're talking about like units, right? And how to make those units. So I think we have some examples of that, don't we?
The approach and the ideology there is that it's very modular. Like, because there's so many units in a box, you have to find ways to keep the cost low and also to fit, and then also provide people the options to differentiate between their units and their characters, because they often share similar parts. And so the trick there is like, how do I make these different poses and personalities while also retaining the core body, like the legs, the torso, like using the arms, different weapon attachments, options, different heads. And that's always the amazing thing that blows my mind. Corey, our other engineer here, like his brain just works so well. And like, okay, I know where to cut. I know where to cut, where to hide that seam. And then I know that I can provide the most out of these characters for the end user by parting it this way.
Yeah, it's pretty complex, like, right? To like to take a body that's holding a rifle blaster like this, and then be able to use that same body to be holding like a big arc cannon, right? Like a different pose. Like that's a very complex thought process to get there.
Like, gun up, one gun up, and then the other hand's doing that way, and then going like sniper rifle pose. Like there's so many anatomical structures that are being moved here in the shoulders, and trying to make that as natural as possible while giving people options. Like, and that's the goal for Legion all the time. It's like we want to let people explore, and we want to let people make their armies their own and give them all the parts to just have fun with it. That's the goal at the end of the day. Just have fun.
Yeah.
We all just want to have fun.
You raise that arm up and that trapezius moves, man, and it just totally messes with everything.
And that's part of the hobby that I really love about it, because it's a collaboration with the community at the end of the day. Like we do our end, and we're in this for like so long because the production timelines are long. They're very long. And so we get kind of like in that tunnel vision of like, this is our vision, this is what we want, and this is our story, and this is our voice. So then when we present it to the customer, when we present it to the player, they have the choice to either expand on what we presented or make it their own. And that's what makes it really awesome and rewarding. And when I go into those Facebook groups and I see people make some awesome paint jobs, or they change the miniature up and make it even better than what I had envisioned, like it's awesome.
Look at that Carnage frame.
Nice.
This was another interesting, like, from an engineering point. Oh, and look, we can see that he's got some hand options. But like when we were sculpting this, I was sculpt directing this with Dave Kidd, but I was sending whips to you, Marco, and like being like, where do you want these like little squiggle? Because like he's got those like black squiggly lines. So where do you want these squiggly lines for engineering? And you were like drawing in like, put along this muscle, move it along this, and then we were like sculpting those squiggly lines to actually be the cuts to some extent.
Yeah, because that's the way you can hide it. And then the other challenge also was open mouths, especially with Carnage with sharp
Yeah.
teeth. Whew. So eventually there's a point in the front of the mouth where that line goes up in the middle. Any teeth there is just going to be one snaggle tooth, like one giant big tooth. So you have to cheat it and kind of figure out a way to make the teeth cast so it isn't just a block in the front, and that you have every nice set row of teeth there that it can be actually painted and it doesn't look off.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, you know, those big open mouths with a lot of sharp teeth, like you can cast those one piece front to back, right? But as you cast that, you have to like backfill the mouth. So we have to look at that. Like sometimes like I've seen you or Evan bring them up on the screen and you like backfill it. And it's just like, it's too much backfill. Like let's cut the head in half and open up the inside of that mouth to make it look cooler. Like can and should is two different things. And like, it's a balancing act between like cool and done, I guess.
Like, it's a balancing act of many things, like all at the same time, as we're because we just want a good we want, at the end of the day, we want a good miniature for people to buy and to also explore and do their own thing and make the most out of their paint jobs. Like
have their little arts. They need to do the arts.
Yeah, of course.
And this Carnage goes together like super well. And actually mine is way over there. He's actually pretty springy. I don't know if Schick has an assembled one, but he's a little springy, but he's very solid because he's got 3 connection points to the ground. And we learned a lot. Like this is a great example. Like we learned a lot from things like Hela leads into Crystal, which leads into Storm, which leads into Scarlet Witch, but also leads into things like us figuring out how to do Carnage, right?
Yeah.
Those
we always, whatever, like, okay, this is what we did, this is what we could do better, and then we move on to the next one, and that's how we just evolve and iterate, like, and then eventually, I mean, we get to a point where we start doing some absurd stuff that I can't say yet, and I'm pretty freaking excited, but that is not, I don't have the authorization to say. But
do it.
No.
Do it.
No.
Fine. What else? What's next, Marco? What are we going to talk about next? I know you had something picked out, and like we're talking about, like, you know, Hela leading into Scarlet Witch, leading into Carnage, leading into Storm, like, or whatever that order was. I can't even remember the order of things that were made. But I know we had another one that's kind of in that vein that you had picked out. Do we have that to show?
Well, I mean, they all led up to Omega Red as well.
Yeah, I'm talking about somebody else. I just sent it to Schick. I think we have an asset. I think we have an asset for that.
He does. Schick is the organizer.
There you go.
There it is.
Boom.
Blade.
So this is another awesome one. Like all those lessons leading up into how to do this, right? Like how to create this effect, how to like produce this miniature. Like we learned a lot and we're able to do this. So by doing all those other miniatures, we can do this. And I think that this is one of my most favorite. I love the personality and character in this.
It's a combination of just a number of lessons in the past, like as you can see, like smoke effects, cloth, the weapons, the way they're interacting with the cloth as well, because you have the sheaths that are under the cape.
Yeah.
the pose, the gesture of it to make sure it reads all 360 degrees, that you have a nice view and angle. Like the challenge we want to give the community is to choose the right photo to take and post on Facebook. Like we want you to struggle. Like I like this angle, but I like this angle more. I can't decide which one I want.
Yeah, because like when you look at like right there, you get that little bit like he's coming in from the side, but then when you look at his profile, you get this beautiful like 45-degree action. Like he's gorgeous.
Yeah, we always encourage like there is a mode where we can just black out the character in our software, and you just see the silhouette of it. And so we do encourage that every once in a while you just turn it around, look at it from a distance, turn it up, and you see if it's readable from that distance, also completely black. Like that, and that way that you're in line with the spirit of the character if you can recognize the silhouette alone.
Yep. Ah, my gosh. Like I'm so ready. Let's do a paint stream. Boom.
Yeah. I oftentimes feel guilty because I put it on our engineers to, push on all aspects of their job, like to, really explore and like make things easily assemble, but also have a great aesthetic that people want to continue exploring and expounding it. Because I already imagine in my head, I'm already seeing just the passion projects people are going to be doing with this blade, making these dioramas like in mausoleums or anything like and it's just, I'm super excited to have people have it in their hands and do all the great, awesome, talented work that they do every day.
Well, it's fun, right? Because like we're very collaborative. I love working with engineers. Like it's a part of my job I don't get to do as much as I used to do. Now that you've taken me out of my job, I'm joking. It's like we get pressed on by like Steve Horvath, right? President like of Asmodee, like pushes on us, on Schick and I, to like make more cooler stuff, and then I get to like, I'm like, oh no, and then I get to press on you and the engineers, be like, look how crazy this is, and you guys are like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna make it? And I'm like, I don't know, let's figure it out together. And then you guys send it to a sculptor. All right, what are you all doing? Like, and you're like, get good, sculptor. Like, let's do this.
Like, let's figure it out. This is the puzzle. Like, they're all puzzles, and that they all bring their own set of challenges. And at the end of the day, we feel proud of our work, and we want to keep doing better. Though, like, it isn't always just doom and gloom. Like, oh, people hate it and we suck. Like, no, it's like, okay, this is what we're gonna do now, and this is how we're gonna make a better quality miniature.
Yeah, it's all about pushing and growing and like making
learning.
Learning. It's developing. It's like being content is like the worst thing for us, right? Me and Marco, like we talk all the time in the studio. Is like we're not even done with the project, and we're done with this project. Like it's time to move and make something cooler. So it's all about being not content and like pushing and growing and developing skills and making really cool miniature art, right? That the community can enjoy. And like you said, I think you brought up like such a beautiful idea, thought. Is like, it's true. Like we make something that we think is pretty cool, and then we send it out to the community, and community makes it even cooler, right? They put their spin on it, and like they paint it up in like a way that we never thought of. And it's just like, wow, that's awesome. Like that makes us one team.
And that's essentially at the end of the day why I lurk often online social medias. Is like, because then I start thinking like, okay, how can I provide a story for them to expand on, a story for them to move forward with? And then we want to approach that with all our Star Wars licenses as well. Like, we want the community to have fun and feel welcomed, and to also contribute to this collaboration.
Did we have did we have any more assets? There's nothing else. I thought
we're out. Oh.
We have 2 minutes left. What's coming up next? I'm trying to remember what's coming up next. the crisis protocol continues crisis protocol thingy comes up and oh yeah, it's the development meeting. So we got 2 minutes. We're gonna wrap this up. Marco, as usual, awesome job. Thanks for sharing information. If there's any questions, shoot them out to us real quick. You got 2 minutes. As I wrap it up, Everall says, "I need to know what Viper is standing on her miniature." It's a bulkhead door that's been broken. Remember, every piece of every tactical rock is a piece of rubble from the crisis going on in the city, right? The heroes are entrenched in battle, right? They're not going to the coffee shop for a scone. They're battling it out. So buildings are getting crumbled and things are getting smashed. So there's things everywhere, and we like to have like a broad spectrum of what that means. So we have like a little bulkhead door for her.
And oftentimes people see it and they're like, I see where they're going, and I want to keep pushing it I want to keep pushing that miniature for them, and I've seen the community do that. They then add to the rubble, they then add to the elements on the base, and they expand on the story that they want to tell themselves.
Yeah,
that's
Deco
cool.
Puma says they're not going out for shawarma. Well, yeah, maybe, but they went out for shawarma after the battle. The cleanup hadn't happened yet, kids.